In the course of his 70-plus-year career, Godzilla has appeared in dozens of motion pictures. Among these, one of the most unusual is the 1969 feature All Monsters Attack, otherwise known as Godzilla's Revenge, which has been excoriated by fans and critics alike, with many singling it out as the worst Godzilla movie ever made. This film is guilty of offenses which, they say, push it past the point of redemption. But can it really be as bad as all that? Today, you are all invited to join me on a fantastic journey, an escape from the ordinary, where we'll look at why this outlier in the Godzilla franchise is so different from the others, why it is so despised, and why it's actually pretty good. I'm Tyler Martin, and this is Monsters from the Id. Times were changing. Following the Second World War, Japan experienced an unprecedented economic boom, rising from the ashes of devastation to become one of the world's leading financial powers. But by the late 1960s, this economic miracle was proving not so miraculous for many. The rapid industrialization of many urban centers resulted in widespread pollution, raising serious health and environmental concerns. With the growth of industry came more and more jobs, with the trade-off of low wages and often high costs for everyday goods and housing. Thus, much of the working class found it difficult to make ends meet. While Japan's influence on the global market continued to grow, many sectors at home were feeling a palpable strain. The country's once thriving movie business was in freefall, with box office numbers across the board dropping year after year. With the rising cost of living and entertainment readily available for free on television, viewers were choosing to stay home. In order to survive, film studios had no choice but to cut costs. Following this overall downward trend was Toho's monster movie cycle. Once a draw for general audiences, these pictures now appealed almost exclusively to children, who were flocking to rival Studio Daiei's kid-centric Gamera series instead. Fellow competitor Toei had seen success with their Manga Festival, a theatrical matinee program headlined by movies supported by episodes of popular anime and other shows, screened during the spring, summer, and winter school breaks. As a result, the Toho Champion Festival was born, a similar event showcasing monster movies, cartoons, and series like Ultraman. Rather than general release, the Champion Festival would become the vehicle for all of Toho's monster productions through the mid-1970s. It was in this context that Toho producer Tomoyuki Tanaka conceived the idea of a monster movie built around footage recycled from previous films. He charged veteran screenwriter Shinichi Sekizawa with developing the concept, and in short order had a pitch to work with: a tale of a kid who fantasizes about monsters. The end result was a socially aware story set in the real world of late 60s Japan, with the struggles of ordinary people front and center. A shift from the usual formula that director Ishiro Honda was eager to embrace. The monsters would take the stage in dream sequences where the child protagonist imagines himself in their midst to escape from the trials of life, and learn some valuable lessons in the process. All Monsters Attack tells of a lonely boy named Ichiro, whose parents are forced to work long hours to get by, having little choice but to let their son fend for himself. Ichiro and his classmates make their way to school and back on the streets of Kawasaki, a heavily industrialized city where noise, pollution, and congested traffic loom at every turn. An odd youngster who collects discarded junk and appears to have but a single friend, Ichiro is victimized by a gang of bullies headed by a little miscreant nicknamed Gabara. Too afraid to stand up to their taunting, Ichiro runs home, where his neighbor, a kindly toy consultant named Minami, looks after him in his parents' stead. Seeking refuge from this dreary existence, the boy fantasizes about traveling to Monster Island, home to an array of movie beasts. He befriends Godzilla's son, Minya, who in this fantasy world can speak and shrink himself to human size at will. We learn that Minya, too, is a lonely kid with a bully of his own, a nasty critter coincidentally called Gabara. Godzilla insists that his young charge learn to stick up for himself, but the tyke has trouble summoning the nerve to do so. Back in the real world, Ichiro, playing in an abandoned warehouse, innocently snags a dropped driver's license, which happens to belong to one of two bumbling bank robbers. Later, ascertaining that he's at home alone, the criminals kidnap him and take him back to their hideout. Terrified, the boy wills himself back to Monster Island, where he cleverly helps Minya overcome his fears and stand up to the bully Gabara. Convinced that his son has done his duty, Godzilla steps in, sending Gabara away limping. Snapping back once more to reality, Ichiro takes courage from the lessons learned in his dreams, and resolves to fight his way out. Amusing Home Alone-style shenanigans ensue, ending with the bad guys in handcuffs. The next morning, Ichiro's mother, guilty over what's happened, promises never to let work get in the way of her being there for her son. But the lad assures her that he understands that some things can't be helped, and he can take care of himself. He is stopped on the way to school by his tormentors, but instead of backing down, the boy stands up to the fearsome Gabara and overcomes him after a brief shoving match. In a further display of pluck, Ichiro gets into a bit of comic mischief, forcing his dad to run damage control as he hurries off to school with his classmates, now the leader of the pack. All Monsters Attack debuted as the headliner for the first Toho Champion Festival on December 20th, 1969. It made its way to the United States 2 years later as Godzilla's Revenge, on a double bill with Terence Fisher's Island of the Burning Damned. The English dubbing veers hard in the direction of a cartoon, and a few of Honda's signature sprinklings of humanity are glossed over, but the story remains unchanged. Special effects-heavy pictures in Japan were typically produced with 2 separate units under different directors, one for the main story and one for the effects sequences. But in this case, due to constraints of time and budget, a single unit was formed with Ishiro Honda at its head. By now weary of being pigeonholed into genre work, Honda seizes the opportunity to present a very different kind of movie, one that allows him greater leeway to explore personal themes that the usual kaiju spectaculars simply didn't allow for. This small-scale drama, with its focus on human interest, was a breath of fresh air for the filmmaker, and his renewed enthusiasm is on full display. This truly is his movie, and he proudly claimed it as one of his personal favorites. The cast, humans and monsters alike, are firing on all cylinders. Tomonori Yazaki's Ichiro is 100% authentic and unaffected, especially impressive for an inexperienced child actor. Genre stalwart Kenji Sahara is smooth and believable as the boy's father, and character actor Hideo Amamoto shines as the lovable Minami, chewing the scenery in the best way possible. The usual Toho regulars fill out the ranks, and they're all in great form here. Also excellent are Haruo Nakajima and pro wrestler Maruchan the Dwarf, reprising their roles as Godzilla and Minya respectively, along with Yasuhiko Kakugo in the part of Gabara. Created with the help of longtime assistant effects director Teruyoshi Nakano, the new monster scenes generally come across well. The legendary Eiji Tsuburaya, by now stretching himself thin with work and in failing health, was on hand to supervise his protégés and offer guidance on the editing of the effects sequences. FX cameraman Motoyoshi Tomioka pulls double duty, shooting live action for the first time under Honda with great results, and the score by Ultraman composer Kunio Miyauchi, alternately playful and groovy, fits like a glove. Detractors of this movie almost universally cite the child-oriented premise and abundance of stock footage as unforgivable sins which place the picture firmly at the bottom of the kaiju barrel. As we have seen, both of these elements were decided from the get-go, and it is worth looking into just how the film functions in light of these supposed handicaps. By this time, the Gamera films were outperforming Toho's monster offerings at the box office by a comfortable margin. One key reason for this was the use of children as central characters who often advised scientists and the military on the creature crises. Young viewers enjoyed seeing kids like themselves playing such a prominent part in the action. By taking the idea of a child protagonist and changing the setting to the real world, Sekizawa and Honda managed, in a sense, to beat Daiei at their own game. Rather than watch a child character live out a fantasy in a clearly fictitious, monster-filled story, children in the audience could fantasize along with Ichiro, who has to deal however he can with harsh realities that many would have found relatable. Far from a weakness, this shrewd move makes for a refreshing change of pace. As we have seen, the goal from the start was to build a movie around pre-existing footage. Thus, a great deal of the action, such as Godzilla's fights with Ebirah the sea monster and Kumonga the giant spider, are lifted from previous movies, recut to better serve the needs of the new script. While this can be distracting, with Godzilla's appearance changing abruptly from scene to scene, it's not merely a shameless clip show as many allege. Most of the repurposed footage serves a narrative purpose, influencing the story and, importantly, the development of Ichiro's character, though some of it is, admittedly, a bit superfluous. Of course, it's not all stock footage. Minya, Godzilla, and newcomer Gabara get plenty of worthwhile face time in newly shot sequences. The final fracas, choreographed by Godzilla suit actor Haruo Nakajima, is a real blast, one of this viewer's favorite monster fights. It is somewhat surprising that more critics don't latch onto the film's ending, as this could be seen as a legitimate reason for complaint. Having finally found the courage he lacked, Ichiro immediately uses it to get into trouble. Though his prank is fairly harmless and played for laughs, it is somewhat jarring. In fairness, he does apologize while running off, and the scene does lay the groundwork for a more involved relationship between father and son, but the apparent mixed messaging might put some viewers off. Speaking from a personal perspective, I greatly enjoyed All Monsters Attack as a child. It wasn't until the advent of the internet that I learned my lesson, for according to the almighty fan sites and message boards, this movie was an utter travesty, and it was my solemn duty to loathe it. To defy this gospel creed might risk charges of heresy, or, at the very least, relentless mockery. Fortunately, things turned around with a 2008 DVD release which featured an audio commentary by the late writer Richard Pusateri, who took the bold step of defending the film. Since then, more reviewers have found it in them to step up to bat for this hapless little movie, though plenty of vitriol remains. Perhaps the hordes of naysayers have never known what it means to be an awkward, monster-obsessed child. Perhaps they have never daydreamed about the fantastic creatures they so love. Perhaps they have never been bullied, found themselves in a tight spot, or used their imaginations to deal with the hardships of life. Or maybe, just maybe, these people see a bit too much of themselves in Ichiro, and feel personally called out, even though the goal of the movie is to encourage, not insult. And in this respect, it succeeds, as long as one is willing to meet it on its own terms. If that isn't enough, we may consider the circumstances of the production, how the filmmakers were in a bind and had to get creative, much like Ichiro himself. Is All Monsters Attack the greatest Godzilla movie ever? Perhaps not, but it is far from the worst. While not necessarily perfect, it is a touching tale sincerely told, brimming with warmth and charm. It reminds us that regardless of age, life is full of challenges, and to find the strength to face them, a little escape might be all we need. In case you couldn't tell, I'm pretty fond of this movie, whatever others may say about it. I'd like to thank Richard Pusateri for encouraging myself and others to give it a second chance. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more monsters from the id. As always, thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time.